Hello, it's Anna Hill here with the Farming Today podcast. Thousands of volunteers are due to take part in a new vaccine trial to protect people against bird flu.
We don't want to face another pandemic without having vaccines in our arsenal that we have really robust scientific data on.
We'll have more on that a little later. First, all week we're hearing how farming is trying to cut down on the damaging emissions it can cause. One of the biggest growers in the Vale of Evesham in Worcestershire says it's making its crop growing more environmentally friendly by developing a giant 1 hectare high-tech greenhouse. Vale Fresco has already grown 10 million plants in the new development, which operates all year round, using biogas to protect against frost in the winter. The company says it's drastically reduced crop spoilage, fertiliser and water use, while also making the UK less reliant on imports. Bob Hockenhull joined the company's commercial director, Joe Pillardi.
I'm standing among 10,500 2-metre tall towers where crops of predominantly parsley are being grown. That noise is the sound of fans circulating and mixing the air to make it more comfortable for the plants. Joe, you used to grow crops like this parsley out in the fields and then you changed. What was the reason for that change?
The main reason for that is the way the climate's changed. The inconsistencies in our weather patterns have made it more and more difficult to achieve the yield and the quality and maintain continuity of supply to our customers.
A lot of places like this would use artificial light, but you don't do that, do you?
No, this is a big difference with our system to the so-called vertical farms we're all aware of. And this particular vertical farm uses natural light, which is free.
And also the water that you use to irrigate the crops, you do that in a sustainable way as well, don't you?
We harvest the rainwater, which obviously is also free, and there's nothing better than natural light and natural water for these plants.
Have you been able to gauge how much more of a yield you're getting compared with when you used to be out in the fields?
I would say we're increasing our planting density by around 400%, so 4 times the number of plants per square metre. And on top of that, with the protected environment, we're achieving 7 or 8 harvests throughout the year rather than 2 or 3 in a good year outdoors.
I suppose one of the things at the moment, we've got the disruption caused by the conflict in the Middle East. How important do you think it is to have farming like this to make ourselves more self-sufficient?
Oh, resilience in our supply chain is the biggest topic really at the moment, and it couldn't be more pertinent. More than 50% of our produce comes from abroad, and at the moment a good percentage of that is just not arriving with the disruption there is in the Middle East.
So we've moved next door from the parsley now, and here you've got trays and trays of basil which you're preparing.
These basil plants have been grown now several weeks in their own little cells. They're pretty much ready to transfer to the towers, and they couldn't come soon enough really. There's normally a full jumbo jet leaving Nairobi in Kenya that delivers our basil into this country, but not anymore. It's massively disrupted with what's going on in the Middle East.
How unique are you, and do you see this type of farming becoming more common in the UK in future years?
We don't really want to be unique because we're not going to solve our issues alone. So we've partnered up with a company called Shockingly Fresh, and together we're looking to roll out many more sites like this of a much larger scale.
Joe Pillardi from Vale Fresco. In a moment, we'll hear how the food industry is coping with increased costs of production as energy and fertiliser prices remain high due to the disruption caused by the Middle East conflict. Well, farmers rely on red diesel for their machinery, and even though the price is discounted, they're now saying red diesel is pushing them into the red. BBC Look North's rural affairs correspondent Lindsay Smith reports.
Filling up the tank is a big part of feeding the nation for Harriet White, whose family are beef and arable farmers near the east coast of Lincolnshire.
Some putting us in the red. Yeah, it's not great.
This year, her family will lose money on every single wheat field because of fuel costs since the war in the Middle East began.
It does affect us quite a lot. We have to think about, my little ones, I've still got them at nursery, and nursery costs are huge as well, and obviously they're going up as well. Our outgoings are rising as a family unit, not even as a farm unit.
It cost 78 pence a litre to run this tractor before the war. That's risen to £1.22 on Monday. Over in Scunthorpe, Anna Jackson is an arable farmer.
Our fertiliser bill has nearly doubled, and we're basically having to reassess everything we're doing on the farm. So a lot of farmers have commented saying, actually, is it worth putting wheat in the autumn, drilling wheat this year, if we don't make any money? And that's where we're at the moment. We're at this silly situation where actually it's not financially very viable at the moment, and that's really scary, and that's why farmers might be protesting very soon.
A government spokesperson said it had extended a 5 pence fuel duty cut until September, and red diesel continues to benefit from an 80% tax discount.
BBC Look North's Rural Affairs correspondent Lindsay Smith reporting, well, that rise in fuel prices having a direct impact on food production costs. Food prices in UK supermarkets are running at 40% higher than they were before COVID. That's according to Andrew Opie from the British Retail Consortium, which represents the major supermarkets. He, along with other food industry leaders, was speaking to MPs at the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Select Committee, which was investigating the impact that war in Iran is having on the cost of food yesterday. The committee chair, Alistair Carmichael, was told by Rohit Kaushish, chief economist at the Agriculture and Horticulture Development Board, that confidence to invest in farming had disappeared, something which will affect farms which are currently on the cusp of viability. The chair asked Mr Kaushish how bad the impact of energy costs could be on food production, and he answered.
There's no doubt in the long term there's a question about eroding productive capacity because that investment's not happening on farm. Yeah. So I think that's the key watch point here, that these shocks will erode away investment over time, and where the cost of finance is elevated at the moment, it's kind of undermining that investment even further. So we could see long-term impacts on key sectors, in dairy, in crop cereals and oilseeds, for example, in terms of production, as a direct result of some of the pressures they're facing now. Yeah.
Okay, feels a bit like the perfect storm just heading our way.
Well, the committee heard that the crux of higher food costs is the price of fertiliser and fuel. Joe Gilbertson, head of fertiliser at the Agricultural Industries Confederation, told MPs that if manufacturers stop producing fertiliser due to a fall in demand, that could have a big impact this summer.
Critical time for us is probably June, July time. If we start to see orders dry up because of a lack of farmer confidence, we're going to move into demand destruction, and we're going to see European plants and UK-based plants potentially go offline. So it becomes quite critical.
The hike in fuel and fertiliser costs has also pushed up food prices. Andrew Opie, head of food and drink at the British Retail Consortium, said food inflation had risen significantly.
Food prices are currently 40% higher in stores now than they were pre-COVID. So our real concern is this will inevitably add costs. You're absolutely spot on to identify energy. I would also add production in that as well, and distribution. Production, by that I mean things like bakeries, food factories, breweries, for example. Distribution, I'm talking about trucks taking food around the country, all of which energy reliant.
Although Andrew Opie maintained that food shortages in the UK would be avoided, he called on the government to step in to help supermarkets to prevent rapid food inflation continuing.
I think what we're going to see is an intense period of even more fierce competition at the retail level, because we as customers have less money in our pockets. We are going to see staples go up in price, and therefore that is a signal for intense competition, where retailers will be investing even more of their profits back into price caps to try and mitigate it. But I do come back to the biggest thing that I'm sure we'll get to. The biggest intervention that the government could make at this point, this was shared with retail leaders, with the Chancellor 3 weeks ago, is on energy and energy support for the food industry. So I'm talking about those bakeries that I talked about. I'm talking about farmers, particularly the intensive livestock producers, horticulture. They need help with energy. And if the government gives that, I guarantee you that will mitigate inflation in stores for customers.
Andrew Opie from the British Retail Consortium at the EFRA Select Committee. A new trial is starting this summer as part of the third phase of a programme to develop a vaccine for people against bird flu. 3,000 volunteers are needed from the UK to take part and 1,000 in the USA. Researchers at the National Institute for Health and Care Research are hoping that poultry workers might take part. Dr. Rebecca Clark is National Coordinating Investigator for the trial.
I think the ultimate goal is that we want to be better prepared. We don't want to face another pandemic without having vaccines in our arsenal that we have really robust scientific data on to allow us to act quickly and rapidly should we find ourselves back in 2020 facing another global pandemic. So I think this is really about getting as much preparation done in peacetime, as it were, so that we're ready if and when we need it in the future.
And how could bird flu trigger a pandemic?
Okay, so we know from history that flu viruses have got pandemic potential and that this avian flu has already made the leap from birds into cattle. Predominantly in the US, that leap has taken place, and that there have been very rare cases of bird or cattle to human infection. We also know that H5N1 in humans who have been infected can have severe disease potential. So if we see that leap from human to human transmission occur, then that's when we would be more worried. And of course, people don't have H5N1 natural immunity. So much like we saw in the COVID pandemic, you would see more rapid spread across the community. And that's what then has that pandemic potential.
Now, bird flu is in the wild bird population, of course, and it's hit flocks of commercial poultry here in the UK. Have there been any cases of avian influenza in poultry workers here in the UK at all?
So we have seen very rare cases of avian influenza in the UK. Like I say, this is not something that I don't want to scaremonger. We're seeing very, very low cases, only just over 100 cases globally so far of animal to human transmission. But we have seen some very, very rare cases based here in the UK, yes.
What are the risks for staff working in poultry sheds, for instance, here? How are you thinking about those workers in relation to this vaccine trial?
The risk remains very, very low. And the reason that we're kind of picking out and identifying poultry workers to come forward for this study is just by definition that they are in closer proximity to birds than somebody who doesn't work in the poultry industry. So it's not so much that we are identifying huge risks per se for those individuals, but just by definition of their jobs, they happen to be at a higher risk.
We do have a vaccine being developed, don't we, for birds? At the moment, a trial is being run. So how likely is it that you're going to get a good vaccine for H5N1?
We're confident. We've seen early encouraging data from phase 1 and phase 2 trials, but of course phase 3 is where you really learn and understand the vaccine in its intended population. So we're confident. The science has led us to believe that doing a phase 3 trial is the right thing to do at this moment in time. But of course, we don't have any of that data yet available to us.
Dr. Rebecca Clark. That's all from us today. I'm Anna Hill. The producer was Rebecca Rooney. Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.